Welcome, everyone, to Real English Voices, the podcast where we talk about language learning, culture, and most importantly, helping you feel more confident when you speak English. I'm Tom, and with me, as always, is the brilliant Ria. How are you doing today, Ria?
I'm wonderful, Tom. Thank you. I'm really excited about today's topic. It's one that every single listener has probably wrestled with at some point. How do we genuinely improve our English skills, not just in a classroom, but in our real lives? It's a huge, often overwhelming question.
It absolutely is. And I think that feeling of being overwhelmed is the first thing we have to tackle. People start with this huge goal. I want to be fluent. And then they look at all the grammar books and vocabulary lists, and it just feels impossible. Where do you suggest someone starts when they're standing at that starting line?
Well, I always tell people stop chasing perfection and start chasing communication. That's the biggest mental shift. When I was learning Spanish, I was so worried about using the wrong tense, and it completely froze me. My Spanish teacher, bless her heart, pulled me aside and said, Ria, I understand what you're saying. You're communicating. That's a success. So the first step is to redefine success. It's not about sounding like a native speaker. It's about being understood and understanding others. It's an emotional hurdle, really.
That's such a great point. It's that fear of making a mistake. I think we need to give listeners permission to make those mistakes. Think of a child learning their first language. They make thousands of errors, and no one judges them. It's just part of the process. So let's get practical. If our listener is, say, at an intermediate level, and they want to move up, where should they focus their time daily?
Daily habit is everything. The biggest mistake people make is only studying for 2 hours on a Sunday. Language is a muscle. It needs constant light exercise. I recommend dividing your day into the 4 core skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, but in a way that feels like living, not studying. For listening, don't just put on a podcast like ours and passively listen. Listen actively. If you hear a phrase we use that you like, pause, rewind, and repeat it out loud. Try to mimic the rhythm and the intonation. That's how you absorb the music of the language.
That music of the language is so important. When I listen to people learning English, sometimes their grammar is perfect, but the stress and the rhythm are off, and it makes them harder to understand. Mimicry is key. And what about reading? How can someone turn reading from a chore into something enjoyable and useful?
Reading. You have to read what genuinely interests you. If you force yourself to read a 19th century novel just because it's a classic, you're gonna give up. If you love cooking, read English language recipes or food blogs. If you're passionate about Formula One, read English sports commentators. The vocabulary you learn from reading something you care about is sticky. It stays in your memory because you immediately associate it with pleasure and a topic you already have knowledge in.
I love that. Make the learning relevant to your life. So we've got active listening and we've got interest-driven reading. Now let's talk about the scariest part for most people, speaking. What's the secret to getting over that wall of fear? Because you can learn all the words in the world, but if you can't get them out, it doesn't matter.
Oh, Tom, this is where I get a little controversial. I tell people to try a technique called shadowing. This is where you put on a short audio clip, maybe a minute of one of your favorite movie scenes or a clip from this podcast, and you try to speak simultaneously with the speaker. You're not pausing, you're speaking over them, trying to match their speed and intonation as closely as possible. It forces your mouth and your brain to work together in real time, training your muscle memory for English sounds without the pressure of forming your own original thought.
That's actually brilliant. It's like vocal warm-ups for an English speaker. It completely bypasses the grammar center of the brain for a moment and focuses purely on pronunciation and flow. And I guess once you've done that, you feel a little warmer and more ready to actually communicate. But where do you find people to speak with if you don't live in an English-speaking country?
The world is so connected now. You have no excuse, really. There are so many language exchange apps and websites. Look for a language partner, offer to spend 30 minutes helping them with their native language in exchange for 30 minutes of English conversation. And here's a tip for when you're talking with that partner. Don't just stick to surface level topics like the weather. Try to talk about something emotional, something you care deeply about, like your childhood memories, your future dreams, or a moral dilemma. When you talk about things that matter to you, your brain is forced to access deeper, more complex vocabulary and sentence structures because you care more about getting the message across. The emotional weight helps the words stick.
That is such a profound point. We speak best when we speak from the heart. And it also helps with what I call the vocabulary problem. Everyone knows the word good. But when you want to express how you truly feel about a movie, you need words like gripping, poignant, or masterful. How do we move beyond the basic 2,000 words?
Vocabulary expansion should be done in context, never just with a list of isolated words. That's the key. When you read something, don't just look up every single word you don't know. That's exhausting. Instead, pick maybe 3 or 4 words from that article that seem particularly useful or interesting. Write those words down in a sentence and critically write the entire sentence they appeared in. The context is the glue that makes the word stick. And then, here's the fun part. Make it personal. Use that new word in a sentence about your own life, your own thoughts, or your own day, and try to use it in conversation with your language partner the very next day. If you don't use it, you lose it. It's a cliche, but it's absolutely true in language learning.
Use it or lose it. I love that. Let's shift gears for a moment to a part of English that I think catches even advanced learners: idioms and phrasal verbs. They are everywhere, and they often make no logical sense. I mean, break a leg doesn't mean you should literally fracture your limb. How do you recommend tackling that mountain of idiomatic language?
Phrasal verbs, the bane of every learner's existence. I used to get so confused between look up to, look into, and look over. The secret here is, again, group them by topic or situation, not just alphabetically. For example, sit down and learn all the phrasal verbs related to work or employment, like take on a new role, burn out from stress, hand in your notice. When you group them thematically, your brain creates a little mental filing cabinet for them, and they become much easier to retrieve when you're talking about work. For idioms, treat them like little cultural stories. Don't try to translate them. Try to understand the image they create, like spill the beans. Visualize someone knocking over a jar of beans and all the secrets spilling out. That visualization helps the memory.
That is a brilliant visualization technique. It turns a boring grammar point into a vivid image. We've talked a lot about the technical side, listening, reading, speaking practice, but I want to go back to the emotional core, because I think that's what makes the difference between someone who gives up and someone who succeeds. What do you do on those days when you feel utterly defeated, when you feel like you haven't made any progress in months?
Oh, Tom, we all have those days. They're absolutely normal. It's often called the intermediate plateau. You've mastered the basics, but the advanced stuff feels miles away. On those days, I tell my students 2 things. First, go back and look at your first piece of work. If you can find a recording of yourself from 6 months ago or an email you wrote a year ago, look at it. You will see progress you didn't even realize you'd made. That's a massive boost of motivation. Second, take a break from formal study and dive into English for pleasure. Watch a lighthearted sitcom in English with subtitles or sing along to an English song you love. Let the language wash over you without the pressure of having to analyze it. Reconnect with why you started learning English in the first place. That spark of curiosity or connection, that emotional refueling is crucial.
That is the humanity of language learning right there. It's not just about the rules, it's about the joy. And sometimes we forget that. I think for the next level, for those who are nearing fluency and want to sound even more natural, what's the one small habit they should adopt?
The one small habit is to become an English observer. Stop just reading and listening and start noticing how native speakers talk. Notice the filler words, like, I mean, kinda. Notice how we shorten things. Gonna for going to, wanna for want to. These little shortcuts are not lazy English. They are the natural rhythm of rapid speech. Incorporating just a few of these, even consciously, can instantly make your speaking sound smoother and more relaxed. And one final, perhaps unexpected, piece of advice for the advanced speaker is start a journal in English about your frustrations with learning English. The irony is, by writing about your struggles, you are forcing yourself to use the very vocabulary and complex sentence structures needed to describe nuanced emotional states, which is the definition of advanced fluency.
That's a fantastic meta piece of advice. Writing about the struggle is the exercise. So, to wrap up, if you could give our listeners one simping, powerful mantra to hold on to as they continue on their English journey, what would it be?
It would be this, and please listen closely. Be brave, not perfect. Seriously, write that down. Every mistake you make is simply proof that you are trying, and trying is the only way to get better. The person who is making mistakes is always learning faster than the person who is too afraid to speak. Your journey is unique. It's personal. And every single day you choose to listen to an English podcast, read an English article, or utter a single English word, you are succeeding. Celebrate that small victory today.
Be brave, not perfect. That is such a wonderful, inspiring thought to end on, Ria. Thank you for sharing your incredible insights today. It's been a genuinely engaging and, I hope, deeply motivating conversation for all of our listeners.
Thank you, Tom. It's always a pleasure. And to everyone out there, we believe in you. Keep speaking, keep listening, and keep showing up for your English journey.
Absolutely. You've been listening to Real English Voices. We'll be back next week with more tips, stories, and motivation. Until then, take care and keep that brave English voice strong.